And we're kicking off with Crown Jewel, with WWE's next Saudi show featuring a stacked card, but one name notable by his absence is Brock Lesnar. Typically, WWE uses Lesnar for their lucrative Saudi shows, but PW Insider has confirmed that WWE won't be using the former Universal Champion for their upcoming event in Riyadh. Lesnar is not in the creative mix, according to multiple sources, with the reasoning being that he is simply not needed for this show. With Roman Reigns vs. LA Knight booked and John Cena and Logan Paul announced for the show, Crown Jewel sold out immediately, with WWE changing the layout of the venue to allow for more seats. With that in mind, WWE doesn't believe that Lesnar is necessary for the show and would rather save him for a future event, though it's unclear which that'll be. We do know that Lesnar is on the poster for WrestleMania 40, which is scheduled for next April, but it remains to be seen if he'll be around before that, after not being used for Crown Jewel. Do you wish Lesnar was competing at Crown Jewel, or would the use of the Beast simply be overkill? Let us know in the comments. CM Punk is a free agent in professional wrestling following his abrupt AEW exit in September, and while questions remain over where he'll go next, recent reports indicate that Impact Wrestling, soon to once again be known as TNA, may have his attention. Nick Hausman's House of Wrestling is reporting that Punk was backstage for the Impact Wrestling on Access TV tapings in Chicago, though not for the Bound for Glory pay-per-view event. According to the report, Punk arrived just before the tapings began around 6:30 p.m. Central Time and was quickly taken to the locker room area. Punk reportedly spoke with anyone who wanted to get some time with him backstage, which was said to have included key talent within the promotion. His backstage presence follows a weekend of post-Bound for Glory buzz, which has only gotten stronger since Impact announced it was returning to its original TNA name. There were also reports that Punk's friend Ace Steel had also been seen working backstage for Impact as a producer. Hausman claims Steel was even considered to wrestle in the Gauntlet for the Gold match on the pay-per-view, but Impact didn't want its fans to assume Steel coming into the fold was a guarantee that Punk would follow, generating potentially unfounded excitement. So what's your take on CM Punk being a part of TNA? Sound off in the comments below. Over to Raw now, and as has become the norm, this week's show kicked off with a combination of Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, and the Judgement Day. This time it was Damian Priest and Finn Balor who started things before being interrupted by Rhodes, who appears to have found a weakness in the faction. The Judgement Day has long shared that there is no leader, and it's a group led by every member except Dominik, but Rhodes disputed that, saying Rhea Ripley is clearly the one in charge. Rhodes added that Ripley is the mommy of all members, not just Dominik, in a comment that Priest and Balor weren't happy about, and a tiny indication of a power struggle that's brewing in the group. This back and forth culminated with Rhodes accepting Damian Priest's challenge to a match at Crown Jewel before Priest and Balor attacked the American Nightmare. While Ripley and Dominik Mysterio made their way to the ring, Jey Uso emerged to attack Dirty Dom and give some flirtatious looks to Ripley, while the camera, for the most part, remained on Rhodes. In the ring, Jey neutralized Finn Balor, but only after Cody was subject to a harrowing assault, with JD McDonough helping Priest injure the foot of the ex-AEW star. Cody's foot was trapped in a steel chair and hit with another while placed against the steps. He was left writhing in pain and had to be escorted to his bus by Jey Uso. On commentary, Michael Cole confirmed that Rhodes had suffered a serious ankle injury, which was pretty obvious, and speculated if his match at Crown Jewel is even going to happen now. At this time, it's unclear if WWE intends to write Cody off of TV, but that seems unlikely given that he's always been presented as a fighter, as his epic performance in Hell in a Cell last year proved. With Crown Jewel around the corner though, it remains to be seen if the match takes place, but if it does, don't expect Cody to be at 100%. If nothing else, this match will break the formula of Rhodes and Uso having tag team matches against Judgement Day members, which after weeks and weeks of such matches is a very welcome break. It was during last week's Smackdown that Jey Uso and Adam Pearce were kicked out of the building by Nick Aldis after Jey showed up to attack his brother Jimmy. During this week's Raw, Pearce was seen telling referees to double the security before Aldis appeared and apologized for his actions, believing that the pair got off on the wrong foot. Aldis justified his behavior last week, saying he was trying to make clear to the talent on SmackDown who's in charge, and while Pearce didn't seem convinced, he didn't kick Aldis out either. Instead, Pearce told Aldis to sit back and enjoy the show, a far different response to Nick on SmackDown, but could all be part of a game that Pearce is playing. It was on Smackdown that Pearce told Aldis, "Let the games begin," which many have taken as a sign of a Raw vs. Smackdown match at Survivor Series. Considering what happened on Raw though, perhaps WWE is taking things in a different direction, especially given reports that a Wargame match between Raw and Smackdown isn't in the works. Then again, we can't count out both Pearce and Aldis playing games of their own, and the only way to know for sure what's coming is to keep tuning in to Raw and Smackdown. It was at last year's Survivor Series that WWE brought Wargames to the main roster, and after the success of that show, it was no surprise that reports came out that the match would return this year. While a Raw vs. Smackdown match inside Wargames isn't expected, a men's match inside the double cage has reportedly been confirmed, but what about a match for the women's division? A source who spoke to Ringside News said that a women's Wargame match hasn't been decided on at this moment, but that doesn't mean a match won't happen. WWE still has just over a month before Survivor Series takes place on November 25th, and while a decision hasn't been made for a women's Wargames match yet, it'll have to be made soon enough. Now, as if the idea of Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre wasn't appealing enough on paper, the two delivered a match that lived up to its potential on Raw, and also incorporated a finish that furthered a key storyline. McIntyre and Zayn beat each other up in a battle that left the Canadian's chest swollen and welted, and in the closing moments of the match, it appeared Sami had this one in the bag. That was until a distraction from Rhea Ripley allowed McIntyre to score the win, with Michael Cole teasing that this could be what life would be like for Drew if he joins the Judgement Day. McIntyre has been teasing a heel turn for a while now, and defeating Seth Rollins and winning the World Heavyweight Championship would be great and allow him a title run with live fans present. The question, however, is whether WWE will pull the trigger on said title change, and it'd be interesting to see what McIntyre would be like as champion and a Judgement Day member, especially with Damian Priest as Mr. Money in the Bank. It's clear that McIntyre is not ignorant and knows what Ripley's endgame is, and likely understands that he is being manipulated by the mommy of the Judgement Day. With that said, Drew might take any opening he can get to defeat Rollins at Crown Jewel, but not falling into the Judgement Day's trap may be easier said than done. What do you think of all this? Will McIntyre leave Riyadh as the World Heavyweight Champion, and should he join the Judgement Day? Sound off in the comments. This week's Raw fell on the same night that Gunther reached 500 days as Intercontinental Champion, and the Australian had some strict orders for Giovanni Vinci. Vinci was ordered to take out Johnny Gargano and not fail Imperium, and while he didn't succeed, it was not without interference. Late into the match, Tommaso Ciampa returned and wiped out Kaiser, and this distraction allowed Gargano the chance to hit one final beat for the win, avenging last week's loss to Kaiser. Once again, Triple H's booking accomplished multiple things at once, the most notable being that it highlighted Ciampa and Gargano as a team on the main roster that fans have been waiting to see. Second, it continued to build tension within Imperium as Kaiser is jockeying to be Gunther's favorite, while Vinci struggles to find the approval and acknowledgement of the Ring General. Whether we're seeing the final days of Imperium, or at least Vinci's part in it, that remains to be seen. But once more, Triple H was able to intertwine ongoing stories. After appearing in the opening, Dominik Mysterio found a new ally on this week's Raw, perhaps the only man as loathed in WWE as him, Logan Paul. After spending months feuding with Dylan Dennis, Paul returned to WWE last week and immediately challenged Rey Mysterio to a US title match at Crown Jewel. Speaking about his upcoming match, Paul started his Raw promo by making fun of Dennis before vowing to give his haters something to discuss when he becomes the new US champion. It was then that Dominik came out, and while fans had already seen him earlier in the night, this encore by no means drew any less of a reaction from the fans. Mysterio is legitimately one of Raw's best heels, a moniker that could extend to the entirety of WWE, which is why it's so strange that WWE still feels the need to add more sound to his segments. Organic responses from fans have made Dominik a fantastic villain, but WWE's piped-in boos have become especially distracting as of late. As Mysterio and Paul took digs at Dirty Dom's father, the enhanced crowd reaction became especially noticeable, as was WWE's decision to turn down the audio on Dominik's microphone, which seemed counterproductive. Mysterio proves time and again that he is a heat magnet, and WWE should have faith in his abilities to rile up the fans, especially with Paul being stood there with him. After some ribbing of Dominik's Hall of Fame daddy, Paul turned his attention to Samantha Irvin, instructing the popular ring announcer to come in the ring. Paul then demanded that Samantha announce him as the new US champion, but Ricochet would then emerge from the crowd, defending his fiancée's honor and attacking Paul and Dominik. Dirty Dom was about to receive a shooting star press before Paul pulled him out of the ring, and it looks like Dominik has a new ally in Logan Paul, one that could certainly pay dividends for both men. What did you make of this segment and the pairing of Dominik Mysterio and Logan Paul? Let us know in the comments below. Raw also saw Becky Lynch put her NXT Women's title on the line against Indi Hartwell, just 24 hours ahead of a title defense against Lyra Valkyria at NXT Halloween Havoc Night 1. The Valkyrie was at ringside for the match, which helped to elevate the significance of her upcoming title opportunity, and she got to watch a very physical match that tested both Lynch and Hartwell. It was good to see Hartwell get an opportunity to regain the title she was never beaten for, but in the end, it was Lynch who won with the disarm her before giving some words of wisdom to Valkyria. If the match was a test of Hartwell's ability to hang with one of WWE's top stars, she passed with flying colors, and it served as a great lead-in to tonight's title match, and by proxy, helped attract viewers. When it comes to booking, Triple H has long been very adept at crafting segments that accomplish more than one thing, or tell more than one story at a time, and this week was no different. Post-match, Candice LeRae was backstage and disappointed by her friend's loss, but didn't have long to dwell on it as she was attacked by Xia Li, who said it was a message to Hartwell as well. Li is a welcome sight given that her last outing was a tag team bout alongside the since-released Lacey Evans against Natalya and Shotzi on a March episode of Smackdown, so some in-ring action is long overdue. Li has been looking for new challenges in the women's division since her comeback a few weeks ago, and has even confronted Becky Lynch a few times for a title opportunity, and that could be in store for WWE's talented Chinese superstar. It was on last week's Raw that a brawl between 5 of Raw's top women ensued, and while Adam Pearce resolved the situation as Rhea Ripley demanded, it wasn't resolved in a way she liked. Pearce booked a 5-way for the women's world title for Crown Jewel, pitting Ripley against Zoe Stark, Nia Jax, and Shayna Baszler and Raquel Rodriguez, and this week saw the contract signing. Ripley made it clear that she was not happy to defend her title against 4 other women at Crown Jewel, but this contract signing went well for the Eradicator, all things considered. Predictably, a massive brawl ensued between the prospective challengers, all while Ripley mockingly rooted them on at ringside. The segment was what you'd expect from a contract signing, but Ripley proving to be a manipulator was a nice touch, and if given sufficient time, these 5 will have a fun match in Riyadh next month. It's hard to deny the popularity of Alpha Academy in recent months, as the skills of Chad Gable and Otis, alongside the comedic timing of Maxine Dupree, has made the trio a must-see act on Raw. Last week, Akira Tozawa was part of a segment with the group in which he showed off his meme-worthy dance, and it seems that was just the start of things for the former 24/7 champion. On this week's Raw, Tozawa was in the corner of Otis and Gable, and given that the Japanese star asked for Gable's advice in a WWE digital exclusive, it looks like this alliance may be permanent. It's worth mentioning that Tozawa has been used mostly as a comedy act on Raw ever since Triple H ditched the 24/7 championship last year, which really isn't a massive change from when the title was around. Tozawa is often seen walking away when faced with imposing stars like Rhea Ripley and Nia Jax, but the former Cruiserweight champion refused to leave when Gable and Otis faced the New Day. Despite the rallying of Tozawa and Maxine, it was the New Day who got the win, with Rhodes pinning Gable following a top rope elbow drop, and the group suffered another loss later in the show. That defeat saw Tozawa be squashed by Bronson Reed, but given that the fans were chanting "Astros suck," a nod to the Houston Astros being 10-2 down at the time against the Texas Rangers, that should show how little the fans cared. Nevertheless, this is the most storytelling we've seen for Tozawa in a long time, and don't be surprised if Akira is a permanent fixture of the Alpha Academy. Piper Niven and Chelsea Green made quick work of their tag team match against Natalya and Nikki Cross, as Cross, who appeared in some transfixed state, walked away from her partner and the contest. As to why Cross was in such a state remains unclear, but this could be setting up something between her and Natalya, giving 2 immensely talented women a spot on the show. Raw also saw Damian Priest build momentum ahead of his Crown Jewel date with Cody Rhodes, defeating Jey Uso in a main event that was marred with interference from Finn Balor. A post-match beatdown by the heels gave way to a triumphant return from a hobbled Rhodes, who fended them off with a steel chair and stood tall to close out the show. This was a solid match that saw Priest continue his recent string of victories with a big win over a legitimate main event star in Uso. There will be some that question beating Jay here, but if the reaction he received prior to the match is any indication, he and his connection with fans will be just fine. Rhodes vs. Priest is a big match, and the company is right to highlight it here. How will it tie into the World Heavyweight Championship match at Crown Jewel between Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre, and whether the Archer of Infamy uses his guaranteed title opportunity to steal the title remains to be seen. So that was this week's Raw, the penultimate episode before Crown Jewel, and what did you think of the show? Let us know down in the comments. After being rehired in late 2022, Eric Young quietly exited WWE earlier this year and has since returned to Impact Wrestling, where he remains to this day. As a veteran of the ring with decades of experience, some were surprised that Tony Khan didn't sign Young when he had the chance, but now we know more about why Young isn't all elite. Speaking to House of Wrestling, Young confirmed that Khan was interested in him, but a deal never materialized, and the Canadian said he would have been lost in the shuffle like so many AEW stars. Young said that leaving WWE and going to AEW would have been replacing one set of problems for another, but made it clear that he had nothing against Khan, saying he's a very nice man. Young summarized his point by simply stating that AEW isn't my place, and that Impact is his home and exactly where he wanted to be. Impact will soon go back to being TNA Wrestling, a name that Young thrived under for years, and while we don't know what's next for EY, he's very happy with the decision he made to return to Impact over signing with AEW. We mentioned earlier that Nikki Cross was in something of a trance during this week's Raw, which resulted in her and Natalya losing their match with Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. After the match, Natalya was clearly frustrated with her would-be tag team partner, and the fans have also been making their views clear on this new direction for the Scottish superstar. On Twitter, fans questioned what exactly is wrong with Cross, with one saying she was acting like Messiah-era Seth Rollins, while another suggested she'd been sprayed with the mist of AEW's Julia Hart. One fan wasn't as concerned about what was happening with Cross, but instead said that WWE is trying the Nikki Cross experiment, which they said will fail like the non-stop Dana Brooke experiments did. Cross's new direction received a mixed response on social media, but this was just night one of whatever this angle will be, and we'll have to see where Cross's bizarre character goes from here. And we're ending with more from this match, as even before Cross's walkout, it was strange to see her teaming with Natalya, given that the Canadian has been aligned with Tegan Nox as of late. On Raw, Natalya noted that Nox had been injured on NXT and would be back soon, and while we don't know what exactly is keeping the Welsh superstar away, we're wishing Nox a very speedy recovery.